Hey everyone, welcome back to another Ask GN. As always, leave your questions in the comment section below for the next episode. We have 3 we're shooting today. So there's this one, there's the next episode that'll go live on the main channel, and then we'll have a bonus episode for Patreon backers at patreon.com/gamersnexus, available to all tiers. If you want access to that, go over there and support us there. But today we're going to be talking about PCI Express 4.0 and a couple of other questions about things like the GT 1030 that we covered recently. Before that, this video is brought to you by Thermaltake's View 37 case. The View 37 focuses on highlighting custom PC builds with its full panoramic window and tinted front acrylic. In our thermal testing, the View 37 performed reasonably well when considering its looks-focused build, which is partly thanks to the airflow design and the removal of a bottom power supply shroud. For a balance of looks and performance, check the link in the description below for the View 37. Before our first question, a quick update on the shirt. The limited edition foil shirt, we've sold a lot of them, almost too many at this point, so we're going to be closing pre-orders soon. If you want it, we'll probably put about another week on it or so and then close it, and then that'll be it. So if you want the shirt and you haven't gotten one yet, place your order on store.gamersnexus.net. It's a limited edition foil version of our 10-year anniversary shirt, and we should be in production pretty soon. We were just getting a distribution of all the sizes so we can accommodate whatever size you want for the most part. So grab that on the store if you want it. First question is from Southeastern 777, who says, Steve, when can we expect the rollout of PCIe 4 according to your best guess? So yes, this is going to be based on research and on what I know. Obviously, I don't have an exact timeline, but I can give you some basics. So PCI SIG, the group that actually ratifies and designs the PCI Express interface and specifications, PCI SIG ratified and released their PCIe 4.0 spec in October of 2017, so last year. And at this point, all the vendors have it. When they ratify and release a spec, it means that the motherboard vendors get it, the CPU vendors get it, and a lot of these people work with PCI SIG while they're designing it as well, so they've all known for a while what was on the way. But also, at the same time when PCIe 4.0 was officially released as a spec, PCIe 5.0 was fast-tracked for 2019, which is really not that far away at this point. So if it's kind of the same release period, you're looking at PCIe 5.0 specs coming out in maybe end of year 2019, fourth quarter, something like that, end of third quarter. What we know now is that, actually it is fast-tracked for second to third quarter 2019. What we know now, though, is that AMD wants to support PCIe 4.0. They've publicly said this in 2020 when they refreshed their AM4 or replaced their AM4 platform. So as AM4 fades out with the first round of Ryzen CPUs and Zen architecture, PCIe 4.0 should start coming in for AMD. PCIe 5, not sure. I mean, that'll be after it's announced, but probably too close to release date for the next platform for AMD, so I would guess PCIe 4 makes the most sense. We're not really at the limit of the interface anyway, so not a big deal. And PCIe 4, just to give you an idea, anyone who doesn't know, it's about a doubling or so every generation. So 3.0 was 16 gigatransfers per second, or 4.0, 16 gigatransfers per second. 3.0 is 8, and then 5.0 is going to be 32 gigatransfers per second. So you have 8, 16, 32, and we're barely even kind of hitting the PCIe 3.0 bandwidth with things like heavily overclocked Titan Vs. I mean, we're really not for the most part, and that's up with 16 lanes, of course. So multiply the lane count by the gigatransfer number. But at 16 lanes with PCIe 3, there's really not a huge rush to move to PCIe 4 anyway. It does look like 2020 is around when AMD is going to support it. Not sure about Intel. They might be a bit sooner depending on what they're doing with their next HEDT platform, but we haven't heard a whole lot yet. So that's kind of the timeline. And then PCIe 5 not too long after that. PCIe 4 will not live as long as 3.0, which I think is noteworthy. 3.0 has been around for a long time now. 2.1 was around for a long time, but 5 is going to come out pretty close after 4 and replace it in whatever the next platform is after those. Next question, Trapper John says, okay, so now I'm curious and have a question, maybe for AskGN. Do you ever worry that a video will make you look like a shill even though you're not? I noticed you chastised Nvidia for the GT 1030, that's appropriate, I'll leave it there, garbage right after saying their NDA was no big deal. Was that on purpose? Also, I would pay for a shirt that says Steve Burke says whatever the hell he wants on camera, but please don't make it black because I'll melt. Okay, so I guess I'll quickly note we did actually introduce a blue shirt. The blueprint shirt is back in stock now. If you wanted it, it was out of stock, but we've just restocked it on the store. So if you don't like the darker colors because it's too hot where you live or something, then I guess we have a blue one for you. But yeah, so just some background here for everyone. Basically, we released the GT 1030 video saying that the DDR4 1030 is bad, don't buy it. I think the day after we released the video about the NDA being no big deal, because it's not. And also the DDR4 1030 is bad. So both those things are definitely true. And the NDA, I think, got way more blown out of proportion than it ever deserved. But part of that is the culture around sort of opposing the larger company in the space, and then part of it is just because Nvidia has done some shady things lately, referred to the 1030 with DDR4, and so people are kind of on edge and on high alert. So as far as the question though, do we worry about looking like a shill when doing videos? The main way, so the answer is we do definitely work on the video scripts and the video coverage in a way that we're like thinking about, okay, what are potential comments so we can try and answer questions just in the video and not have a bunch of questions where we have to do a follow-up video to answer them. So part of that's like benchmark coverage, part of it is test methodology. That's why we have the articles with some of the testing detailed, so that if you have questions on what CPU was used, then you can just go to the article and find that information. So we do tailor the content to try and address questions before they're posted, just to help everyone and make things a bit more streamlined. And then in that process, we're also looking at what are potential concerns people would have. So, I mean, yeah, with the GT 1030 video we shot before we filmed the NDA one. The NDA one was kind of last minute. It was super rushed because it was a hot topic, and we were able to get the lawyer who spoke with us to call in and talk to the subject kind of on last minute notice. So that was pretty rushed. GT 1030 is already shot. But I will say that we do definitely consider when posting something like saying the NDA is no big deal, of course, we're sitting there thinking the comments are going to be like, at least a few of them will say you're supporting NDA, Nvidia and their NDA, you're supporting their actions, you are on their payroll, all that kind of stuff that we see all the time for any video. So of course that is considered. There's not a lot we can do about it other than trying to be just as neutral as possible. Releasing the 1030 video certainly helps with tempering some of the people who might be more extreme, but there's only so much you can do to deal with those people who are just absolutely convinced that you're out to get the company that they decided they want to support for absolutely no logical or rational reason for the most part whatsoever. So ultimately, no reason to be loyal to any of these companies, but some people get so loyal to them that Nvidia, Intel, or AMD, that it just kind of, I think, blinds their judgment to a point of posting those comments, and we can't do anything about that. So our goal, basically, to answer the question of, do we worry about it or what do we do to deal with it? The answer is just remain as neutral and objective and straightforward as possible. And as long as I do that, then I'm not really concerned about it, because at the end of the day, there's always going to be a product where we say this is a good product. There's always going to be one where we say this is a terrible product, and it's probably going to come from the same company even. So, I mean, all I can really do is point to videos and say, well, look, we supported them there and we opposed them here, so what more do you want from me? So hopefully that answers it. Basically, it's something we consider. We don't tailor content around it because I make the content that I think you guys want to see, and I don't think anyone wants to see content that's like had every line poured over to make sure that it's not going to offend anyone, because frankly, I don't care. So we just focus on covering the truth of whether it's good or not, and then the rest of it, whatever. It doesn't really matter at that point. Next question, Oliver Wilton says, what do you use to find out why a CPU OC crashes? Temps are easy to see, but what about power needed? What setting needs to be changed, etc.? And at what point do you just say bad luck on the silicon lottery? Also, any plans for some more thick GN hoodies? It gets cold here in England in winter. Yes, we'll be introducing them again towards winter, so good timing on that. The question, what do we do to find out why an overclock crashes? Typically, the easiest thing to do is just change one thing at a time. So as long as you're doing that, if it was stable before and you changed voltage, then you pretty much know why it crashed. It's because you probably lowered the voltage too much. Or if you increase frequency but you keep the same voltage, you know why it crashed. So as long as you just do one thing at a time, it'll be fine. You'll figure it out pretty much immediately. If you really can't though, like let's say, and this happens a lot, let's say with the GPU OC or RAM in particular, you might have settings that are perfectly stable in your stability test, if it's 3D Mark or whatever, but then as soon as you start playing actual games, it'll crash for seemingly no reason. Typically what I'll do, first of all, for Intel, XTU is really good. For AMD, Ryzen Master is okay. It's certainly gotten better, but it doesn't have some of the same reporting features that XTU has that I want. So in either situation, I would still recommend Hardware Info 64. It is great software. It's free. It's a really good monitoring utility. And when you open it, you click on the sensors or just check mark the box that says sensors only. Open that. It'll reduce confusion. And as you scroll down through the list, you'll see a whole bunch of items that are just listed as yes or no. And there'll be thermal throttles, power throttles, current throttles, voltage limitations, stuff on GPUs, like Nvidia GPUs where you can't change the voltage, stuff like that. GPU-Z is also really good on the GPU side if you want to see the perf cap reason it's called. So it'll be something like VREL or something like that. And then you can look up the code and see what that means in their basically forums or manual online, more or less. So that'll give you troubleshooting tools. For Hardware Info and for XTU, the big thing to look at for those is the current limit and the thermal limit. And if it says, yes, you're hitting the current limit, at any point during a benchmark, it'll stay in the maximum column. It'll stay as yes, even though it might not be hitting that limit when you look at it. So look at the maximum column. If you see any yeses for thermal or current limits, then reboot, go into the BIOS options, disable current limits, stuff like that. If you think it's safe to do so, it normally is. For an Asus motherboard, for example, you go to the Digi Plus VRM section. I think a lot of people don't even know that page exists. It's really important though. Go to that page and you can change the DRAM current limit, CPU current limit for the core, and any other power limits in there. Just disable them all or max them out. Be careful about LLC, be careful about voltage. As long as you're careful on those two things, you're not gonna hurt anything. So the tools to use, Hardware Info 64 for both platforms, for Intel and AMD, and also it's okay for GPUs. GPU-Z is better for GPUs. And CPU-Z is an okay tool just to check and make sure your numbers are what you typed in BIOS, but not great at sort of debugging or troubleshooting. And then XTU is an Intel utility. That's pretty good also at giving you what the error is, though Hardware Info does much of the same. And Ryzen Master is okay. Not my favorite. They just kind of started working on it in the last year or so, though, so that'll improve. But Hardware Info is very good. So hopefully that helps. I think as for at what point do you say bad luck on the Silicon Lottery from the same question, I would say bad luck on the Silicon Lottery at the point where I've actually did this recently with one of our 8700Ks, where you increase the voltage to a point where you're no longer comfortable with it for daily use. So I think I had pushed one of our 8700Ks up to something like 1.45 volts for vCore and high LLC, and it still wasn't taking 5 gigahertz stable. And so at that point, you're kind of like, there's really not much else I can do, because 1.45 is on the high side, can delit it, can put liquid metal on it, can put a huge radiator on it and deal with the thermals. But if it's still not doing the frequency you want, then, I mean, that's kind of it. So that would be the point, basically, is the point at which voltage no longer is a comfortable setting for daily use and you can't achieve a frequency that you think is standard to achieve, then I would say that's the point where you say bad luck. Next question, and that was a good question, by the way. If anyone has more software monitoring or logging utility questions, let me know. Next one is from Stu. I think this is on the Patreon Discord, who says, what accounts for discrepancies in the way CPU clocks are reported? This is also a really good question. I.e., if at 4.5 gigahertz, Task Manager will say 4.49, rivatuner will say 4.495, CPU-Z and Hardware Info display accurate info based on, oh yeah, these are my notes. So if you set, let's say you set a multiplier of 45 and you think you have a base clock of 100. So that should be about 4.5 gigahertz. The reason, some of it's rounding errors. So the GPU-Z does this too, where in old versions of GPU-Z, I think this has since been corrected, I'm not sure, some video cards would show GPU load at 99%. They would never go to 100. And that was a rounding issue. So it actually was 100. But whatever was going on in the software was rounding to 99. Maybe it was 99.6 and it just decided to round down instead of up or something like that. So sometimes it's rounding errors. Task Manager is kind of buggy in general with reading frequencies at times. I don't know if that's rounding or what specifically that is. But I can speak to CPU-Z and actually just motherboards. Let's start with motherboards. So motherboards, it might say 100 megahertz for your base clock in BIOS, and or if you left it auto, you would assume it's 100. But the thing is, motherboards have variants on the base clock, and this is actually a point of discussion for the motherboard vendors, where they've been talking lately about MCE and whether it should be on or off. But there's a new thing, and heads up, I guess, at this point, where BCLK, they're now discussing, okay, if MCE is off, what if we just enable a higher BCLK? What if we push to 100.5 instead of 100? Or even, we'll probably stop at 100.5. Some of them are bouncing around between 98 and 100 or 100.5. So a lot of what you're seeing is going to be the ratio is correct, but the base clock is jumping around, and that's the motherboard vendor at, I guess you could say, fault, but it's not necessarily a fault if it's 4.49 out of 4.5. That's pretty good. So yeah, base clock changes a lot. If you open up CPU-Z, you'll often see that it says 100 point something when it should be 100 or 99 point something. I think that answers most of the question. Also rounding errors. Next one is from Onsun, who says, by the way, I'm very skeptical for nail polish for CPUs. I mean, so close to the actual die, the temps are going to be close to 100 degrees Celsius. I believe this should be enough to make liquid again, or if it's not completely liquid, maybe they have viscosity to run down slowly and move away from the capacitors. So some reference material here. I think this is in response to talking about liquid metal or something, or nail polish choices last week for CPUs to protect the SMDs, like the small capacitors and things. And the thing is, as far as melting or changing its state, you have to remember, first, the die is probably not going to be 100C, but if it is, because you've delidded it, so one would hope that it's transferring heat pretty well. If it is 100 degrees, though, that is basically strictly on the cores on the die. So it's pinpoint areas on the die. It'll spread over the die surface, so you might be in the 90s or whatever across the whole die. But as soon as you get off that die and over to the caps and the SMDs, that, like on X299 CPUs, they're pretty close, but they're not that close. They're far enough away from the die that, I mean, the temperature drop is huge because it's no longer the silicon. So although the die is 100, it's transferring that heat into the IHS, hopefully via liquid metal or something, and actually definitely via liquid metal, because otherwise you're probably not using something to protect the caps unless it's conductive thermal paste. And then all the other heat going over to the SMDs, it's going to be low enough to not really matter. So I wouldn't worry about it. We've had CPUs, X299 included, running for like a year now with liquid metal and with nail polish on them to protect the SMDs, and there have been no problems. The liquid metal is still fine, the nail polish is still fine. So you can use conformal coating, you can use Kapton tape, stuff like that. Those will work pretty well. But if you already have like nail polish around, for example, then that works just fine as long as it doesn't have toluene in it, which can be pretty bad for the SMDs. So just check the chemical composition. Also careful of things like acetone if you're getting it off. But next one is from Batemen, who says, a lot of tech YouTubers have your MODMAT. How do you feel about this extra publicity? It's pretty cool. So we sent it out. Like Linus has one of them. He's shown that one a couple times now. I think actually, speaking of liquid metal, in their recent whatever video they were doing with liquid metal, it was in there. So it's cool. People seem to actually like it. We sent it to YouTubers that we know and work with, and basically asked them, do you have any feedback on how to improve this thing for our next whatever MODMAT product we do? We were working on a medium, for example, that'll hopefully be in production soon. So we asked them for feedback. It was great to talk to people who are professional product reviewers and see what they had to say. And obviously, we sincerely appreciate that they actually like and use the product and even show it on camera. It's a nice bonus. But the coolest thing is that these people who actually like do the stuff we do every day, build computers every single day basically, are using it, as opposed to some other surface, I think hopefully speaks to the quality, and it's also nice to have professionals who can give us feedback if they think we can improve something, because it just means we can make a better product much faster that way. And then last thing, this wasn't a specific question, but there are a lot of them just in general about this shirt and about other products we have while we're on the topic of the store. So we've seen a lot of questions about shipping costs and duties and customs and stuff like that. Shipping cost, the store will auto-calculate it before you buy, so you can see what it costs. If you have a question how much it costs to ship to your country, you can do that on the store. And if you don't like it, that's fine. We get it. Just back out. And then any other questions, we'll do our best to help you. I don't know customs regulations for every country, obviously, but we can try and help you. Just email support@gamersnexus.net if you have a question, and we'll try and help you out there for sure. So that's it for this one. As always, patreon.com/gamersnexus helps out directly, or get access to the bonus episode. We'll have a second episode that'll go live on the main channel around the time this one does, maybe plus or minus, 18 hours or so. And store.gamersnexus.net to pick up this shirt before it's gone. Probably closing pre-orders in about a week or something like that. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more. I'll see you all next time.